Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's special topics on social equity as part of the Community Resilience Project. I'm coming to you live with COVID hair. My name is Michael.Cole.
My name is Charla Burnett.
And we have been working on what's called the Community Resiliency Project for the last couple of months. And we are building towards kind of a set array of programming through the lens of social equity that relate to issues of food security, waste management, sustainable energy, education, housing, kind of the major societal issues that we're facing now. This effort was largely kind of catalyzed because of COVID-19 and the structural weaknesses that were kind of revealed as a result. I do want to point out before we go further, if you hear groans and moans, that is coming from our 9-month-old child who is directly below us. He will also be tuning in for the meeting because he doesn't have a choice. So today we've set out an agenda. We basically want to go through what we've already done and kind of leverage that into talking about what our plan is for the next year. Ooh, we have a visitor.
Hello, Sharon. Welcome.
Thank you.
Please feel free to
planning for Sundays usually, but I thought I'd just pop in and see what y'all are doing.
That's great.
So we're gonna give a little bit of an overview. This event is live on Facebook, so you are being live streamed and it's recorded. So just a forewarning. But please feel free to chime in. We're gonna give a little bit of an explanation around the project. Where we kind of are in the planning process, and then what our goals are for the immediate future.
Okay.
So basically, as Charla said, we're going through kind of the list of what we've already kind of accomplished or where we've focused our energies. We've had an array of different volunteers coming, kind of an open door policy, helping when they can, which is the life of a volunteer kind of organization. So the first step that we wanted to kind of achieve was really, since we're going to be looking through these social issues relating to food security, energy, housing, education, the whole gambit, we'll be looking through that through the lens of social equity. So it was important for us to actually get a sense of what the community saw and understood as social equity. Most of our approach is kind of a participatory action approach, so we definitely want to get feedback from the community, and we want our initiatives to be driven by community members. So why spend time even defining a concept like social equity? The concept is so universal in its usage, emphasis, and application. It changes depending on the actors using the term, the context in which it's invoked, and sometimes the configuration of the existing kind of power relations that exist in different places and times. So the malleability of this concept can be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can be adopted in a number of different kind of contexts and kind of spatial conditions. But on the other, social equity can also be used as kind of a subterfuge, providing a veneer of legitimacy while being co-opted or inverted to uphold the structural conditions that already exist to exacerbate inequities in society. So right off the bat, equity and equality, because they're used interchangeably, it's important to point out that there is a key difference between them. Equality is giving the same to everyone without considering or understanding what's needed. Depending on the context, the contemporary circumstances, the historical context. So basically equity also kind of focuses on the extent to which people are disadvantaged and focus resources specifically on those groups, communities, what have you. Oftentimes social equity in the policymaking world is kind of understood as a euphemism for issues related to discrimination against persons of color. And while this is true, it's also it's a fairly narrow understanding of what social equity means, because social equity encompasses a diverse set of kind of compounded public policy societal issues Issues of equality and inequality in relation to race and ethnicity intersect with issues of gender. Gender, race, and ethnicity intersect with poverty, creating kind of even more complex patterns and problems. So we definitely want to have this eye towards the larger scope of what organizations practicing social equity would actually look like. So what I wanted to do, this is kind of the quick definition, and a lot of this is kind of predicated on the survey on social equity that we have sent out. It's only been kind of floating around out there for a little over a month. So we've had about 25 respondents to the survey as of right now. So basically, 91% of the respondents on some level have heard of social equity, and roughly the same amount recognize it as a particular problem. It's the qualitative comments that were actually kind of the most helpful in this survey, so we could really get to the meat of the issue. One of our questions was, how do you define social equity? And it essentially revolves around kind of like these three kind of pillars. One is distributive justice, or like a just approach to the distribution of social resources. Everyone has their basic needs met, equal access, opportunity to economic programs as well. The next kind of constellation of answers from the respondents were related to procedural justice, procedural equity, and that kind of relates to the fair management procedures in government, and people being protected equally by kind of equally applied laws. So there isn't inconsistencies based on where, say, a crime had been committed versus like wealthy, poor neighborhoods, that kind of thing. And also, another constellation was kind of a more normative, value-based kind of area, which is recognition. So basically, non-discrimination based on sexual orientation, race, gender, again, kind of equal civil rights, and creating respect and value for all cultures. So this is basically kind of the larger, if you think of it as a triangle, this is kind of what we're trying to bring together with these terms social equity. So it was really helpful hearing from the community in this regard. About 57% of respondents answered yes in terms of whether they would participate in social equity discussions or town hall. So there is somewhat of an interest in this. And briefly, I just want to mention the latter part of the survey. Thank you, buddy. One of the questions, what do you think should be done to ensure social equity in Lansing? So we really wanted to open this up to you and to see if people had specific recommendations for this. And there were a lot of great answers. Some of them more familiar than others, but and these were kind of just the averages of what we had seen. So one is more investment in healthcare, education, food, which is right up the alley of what we want to be doing anyways, and creating incentives for organizations to do that. And so greater, not only short-term commitment, but long-term commitment. Like, how can we embed this into institutions and long-term planning across sectors? So that's also something we're going to get into, is how do we create cooperative nodes between people who don't necessarily do the same type of social program or do the same type of business. Who decides? There seem to be some issues with, particularly in Lansing, that there's at least on a perceptual level, there are only a few organizations that really are in charge of allocating these resources and deciding who gets them. So creating a more open and transparent decision-making process for the allocation of economic development money was pointed out several times. And I think related to this, the creation of a social equity commission at the governmental level might be something we could push for, either in terms of creating campaigns of advocacy for this, or actually helping to design what that might look like in a public policy kind of forum. Better communication, empathy, and inclusivity. I think we can all kind of agree that at this point in society, we need to have a little bit more empathy, and we should kind of emphasize that as a cultural value to understand where everyone is coming from. Others were job creation, bring together stakeholders, populations of most impacted, discuss and decide on the most pressing concerns of the community, and ensure the local community has a greater say in how these issues are identified and addressed. So being kind of included in the entire process, not just kind of conceptualizing what the actual issue is. Realign societal and economic incentives away from greed. That also makes sense. And again, figuring out if there are monetary values for convincing organizations why they would want to participate in social equity programs. And this could even be inverted in thinking in terms of how social inequity might cost your business more money, so it actually benefits you financially to be a part of a social equity campaign. I mean, we are living in a kind of capitalist free market world, so sometimes figuring out what the economic incentives are for participation or not is also very important. Lastly, increase focus on the most disadvantaged groups, and I think that really kind of connects to why we're looking through social equity, because it's not about giving everyone an equal amount. It's really kind of correcting some of the societal structural issues that have disadvantaged groups for many, many years. And then lastly, what organizations are working on social equity in Lansing, Michigan? And this kind of folds into what we had done next.
How many did you identify?
So we identified in our, including those that were identified in this, there were about 20 different organizations that were identified through other individuals through the survey. But we actually were able to compile a spreadsheet of around 50 organizations working across Michigan that are in some way connected to an area of social equity, whether or not they kind of articulate that mission or not, because a part of it is just providing access to certain societal resources that are not often available either by public or private sectors. So we compiled that list, and we took that list and created a MailChimp, thank you, buddy, a MailChimp email campaign in which we are soliciting their input. And what we're hoping to do from there is to create focus groups around these different focus areas of food security, housing, sustainable energy, education, and learn, what the challenges are for these type of programs, what they've already been doing to if they are interested in a more equitable society, what they've already been doing in this regard, and what we can do to kind of incentivize participation, even financial commitment from these organizations to be a part of the focus groups. And where we would like to take that as a part of, what kind of one sector of what we're doing is have an end of the year summit in which we have all of these organizations in the same room. We synthesize the findings from these individual focus groups, so we're thinking between 4 to 6 throughout the year, and then create a strategic plan that is then agreed to by the participants. That will have specific deliverables for them for the next year in terms of how they can kind of augment their reach and create a more focused social equity program across this. So it's really what we're hoping for with these sessions is to prioritize, focus, and distribute resources, improve the collaboration and coordination between kind of groups working in different sectors, create partnerships and create partnerships with unique and diverse expertise. Also improve the measurement. This is what's challenging about having a child while we're doing this type of organizing work. But we also want to improve the measurement, accountability, and transparency over time between these groups and how they're conducting these programs and how we can measure success in an evaluation method. And then generally just raise awareness and publicize progress and good news, because that also is kind of a key source of public buy-in is basically being able to market to your organization's shareholders that not only are you doing good business, but you also are doing it in a socially responsible way, and kind of along the precepts of good governance, which is what we're trying to establish here. Before I go on, do you have any questions? Sharon, if you wanted to chime in at any point, I can talk about this for days, and sometimes I just don't stop. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
I know for me, what I'm looking for, I'm the minister at a Unity Church. We often meet at the Fledge when we're meeting in person, and just looking to see where we could tie in with you. But right now, I think the vision is so big, I can't find a way that we could easily, like, I'm looking for more in the weeds, some specific project that we might be able to partner with you on.
So the next part of this particular meeting, Charla and I spoke before we came on here, and we just kind of outlined a rough sketch of what we wanted to be doing for the next year, because we also like kind of strategic plans for ourselves. So we do have deliverables that are not too abstract, but actually get into the minute details. So Charla, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
So both of us are researchers at the University of Massachusetts, and we moved back to Lansing because it's my hometown, and we decided to start a family. And so we've both been studying sustainable development here in the United States and abroad for a good about 10 years. And so we wanted to take both of our research expertise to develop a special participatory model. So I started Refugees Welcome back in 2016 in Boston, and we worked with all of the immigrant service providers across the greater Boston region. It was roughly around 300 organizations, and we brought 60 of them together to do a strategic plan. We divided everyone up with a facilitator to discuss one aspect of kind of services. So there's health, obviously, there's education, there's legal work, and that's kind of the way that we're seeing this process go forward. So what it entails would be a commitment by organizations to participate in 6 focus groups across the year. We would raise all of the money through Organizing Together Foundation, which is a 501c3 that's focused on providing technical and fundraising support for community resiliency projects. And so going forward, we will be first reaching out to partners in social equity, because we truly believe that all the other parts, whether it be housing or food security, the reason why these aren't working for everyone in our community is because there's a lack of social equity. So we've been kind of building this framework for the last couple of months, like really getting to understand the environment around each of these different aspects of community resiliency. And now that we've identified these groups, we'll be reaching out with them and hopefully asking them to participate, and what that would mean with a commitment to those 6 focus groups. We would then bring everyone together for that big strategic planning summit, so that we could create a 5-year strategic plan that would incorporate a memorandum of understanding by businesses and organizations to uphold and integrate social equity into all of the work that they already do in the community. So our goal is not to remake the wheel and create another organization. We don't think that that's needed. I think that there are amazing organizations all over the region that are specifically focused in this. I just think that they need a little bit more help coming together and strategizing, and then also fundraising. So a part of that is we're going to volunteer to use all of our marketing experience through our consultancy portion of Organize Together to raise funds for whatever project that these organizations decide on. So we play the role of facilitator to understand what programs that our leaders in our community already know exist.
So it may be early for us to get involved at this point.
Yeah, I think that it would be...
That's my sense, that it's just early in your birthing process, and we're kind of trying to refocus on rebuilding and stuff, but I just wonder if there was, just keeping an ear out in case there was a way that worked.
Well, I completely think that we would love to partner with you, whether it be that you just, keep your parishioners up to date on the kind of work that we're doing would be really helpful.
That'd be great.
And if they're interested in volunteering and helping to host one of these events, so it would be nice for us to host each event at a different place around Lansing so that we can try to get feedback from a more diverse crowd. And so if, when you guys do open back up and if you wanted to host one of these meetings, I think that would be really helpful. if maybe your organization would like to raise some money to provide snacks. Hopefully we'll be able to meet together in the next year, at least it's for some of those meetings. Telling them to donate to the project once it gets going. Those are things that, all organizations could help us with. But
I gave you my email address in the chat.
Perfect.
Put me on that list, and we haven't even decided when we're feeling safe enough to meet in person.
Yeah.
So, and depending on what happens over the next couple of months, some of these focus groups might in fact happen through Zoom and not at a physical location. But I would argue too that I don't think, though we are a nascent kind of, community organizing initiative right now, I don't think it is too early to start kind of interrogating the ways in which our independent organizations kind of either inhibit or enhance social equity within the community. So you kind of, like you said, just keeping your ear to the ground, about what, we're still up to, but also kind of doing an inventory, within your organization and all of, anyone else who's watching this recording, to think about their organization, think about where the possible pathways for cooperation and collaboration could be. And then, because you are also a part of this planning process, this is community-led.
So we have this meeting every other week. I'm not sure if it's going to stay on Saturdays. We're going to get some more feedback from people who participated and maybe change the schedule. But we do like an open style town hall meeting every other week. And any one of your churches is more than welcome to come and just talk. A lot of kind of the methods and the underlying conceptual basis for participatory action research is dialogue and the restorative nature of speaking one's truth, which I think comes hand in hand with social equity and just the opportunity to feel heard. Are you being supported by your community? Do you feel like you have a community? Like, what does social equity mean to you in regards to forming that community? And then we also have that survey on social equity and a survey on food security that we're passing around the community so we can understand a little bit more about what people think about social equity. And we've been talking a lot lately, too, about once kind of things hopefully get better surrounding COVID, that we would actually go do some door knocking, do some surveying that way, because we know that a lot of people can't participate. I mean, 26% of residents in Lansing don't have reliable access to internet.
Right. And I do want to take just one step back just to emphasize this point for anyone listening and anyone here in the room right now, is that the resilience component of the Community Resilience Program, our thinking on this, and this is actually a part of the research that I do, is thinking in terms of how these networks of social cohesion, social capital between these groups in the community actually do make these communities more resilient, even if they don't necessarily have the financial resources to, sometimes these results are unexpected. So there's studies out there that show wealthier communities post-disaster scenarios are not always as readily able to adapt to those circumstances as possibly poorer communities that have, a built-up network of kind of social cohesion. So we already have seen in Lansing that there is a great amount of collaboration between organizations, and these networks, these philanthropic networks kind of already exist. Our goal truly is to strengthen those networks and find new avenues through which these groups can participate and actively help impact one another's programs to further their reach. So that's kind of where the resilience aspect comes of this, the adaptability of the community to absorb these type of shocks like COVID-19 or some of the adverse effects of climate change in the next several decades. Having these networks that people can rely upon and kind of build this community between them, I think is crucial for having a more resilient society. So I think that's also a part of our drive to create these networks and coordinate them and collaborate them. So it starts by creating buy-in from all of these different organizations, figuring out how to incentivize their participation, not only in the program, but also implementing the strategic plan and creating, programming that considers social equity dynamics. So that's.
I need to
really
sign off now.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you
I got other people watching on Facebook.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
So what we spoke about before this meeting, again, we want to get to the level of focus group with the organizations that we have sent out. This email went out about 2 weeks ago, and we will be sending it out periodically. It basically gives everybody access to our website, our kind of planning tools, our mission, the proposal, all of that. And so you can do a deeper dive in any of those materials if you are interested out there. So in the next couple of weeks, we're also going to be strategizing for fundraising and figuring out how we can kind of help support these organizations, further their impact as it relates to social equity. And then we want to use our consultancy's marketing ability, as Charla mentioned, to help publicize what we're doing. And this also helps to keep everyone accountable to the public promises that they make. So I think this is a kind of an important component to this, and this is why we encourage more people to come to these sessions. There's no commitment by sitting in on the meetings, but we definitely want to hear from everyone. Clearly, both Adam and I love to be the center of attention, so we would definitely like to hear more voices, more diverse voices in on the situation, and hear the multitude of perspectives on how we can help to make life better in our community and possibly create a model that other communities can scale to.
So thank you for tuning in. And we hope that maybe you'll join us on one of our bi-weekly discussions and town halls. They're open to everyone. And we are here to be as inclusive as possible. And so hopefully soon we'll also be able to do these town halls in person or out at a park, so that individuals who do not have access to this type of technology can still participate.
Absolutely.
So if you have any feedback, leave it in the comments. We'll take that into consideration. All of the meeting minute notes, all of our meetings are recorded and posted on our YouTube channel for OT Consultancy Group. Thank you.
Also, lastly, our next meeting will take place this Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. So if you would like to join, this is kind of a more kind of focused in
for volunteers.
For
anyone
volunteers
interested in actually doing action work in the background.
We do want to make sure that we are moving towards participatory research, so not only on the research end, but also turning this into action, and we need your help to do that. So thank you again for tuning in. Like I said, I'm coming to you live with COVID hair. My name is Michael.cole.
My name is Charla Burnett.
And we are OT Consultants. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you.
Bye.